I will now call to order the regular city council meeting of November 14th, 2022. Members of the public are invited to attend in-person meetings in council chambers. Public access to the meeting is also available by telephone by using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Meetings are broadcast on Channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers and on the city's YouTube channel online. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford will be absent. Councilmember Whitkovich.
Here.
Councilmember Jaramillo.
Here.
Councilmember Kondo.
Here.
Councilmember Lukeman Haramasa.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Brown will be absent. And Councilmember Walker will be a little late tonight.
Yes, thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heather, are there any responses to citizen inquiry?
Nothing this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? No. Okay. We have 3 proclamations tonight, so council, if you'd like to join me down front. All right, the first one tonight is Small Business Saturday. So we have Aaron Leedy with us, owner of Missing Piece Puzzle Exchange, will accept tonight's proclamation, so come on up. Hi. I need to go to wherever that is. I can't wait. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Okay. Whereas the government of North Glen, Colorado celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. And whereas, according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 32.5 million small businesses in the United States, and they represent 99.7% of firms with paid employees. They are responsible for 62% of net new jobs created since 1995 and employ 46.8% of the employees in the private sector in the United States. And whereas 79% of consumers understand the importance of supporting small businesses in their community on Small Business Saturday, 70% report the day makes them want to encourage others to shop small, independently owned retailers, and 66% report that the day makes them want to shop small all year long. And whereas 58% of shoppers reported they shopped online with small businesses, and 54% reported they dined or ordered takeout from a small restaurant, bar, or cafe on Small Business Saturday in 2021. And whereas the City of North Glen supports our local small businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our neighborhoods. Now, therefore, I, Meredith Leidy, Mayor of the City of North Glen, Colorado, do hereby proclaim November 26th, 2022 as Small Business Saturday in the City of North Glen and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. Dated at North Glen, Colorado, this 14th day of November, 2022. So thank you for being here. Do you want to add anything?
No, I just want to say thank you on behalf of all North Glen small businesses to accept this proclamation.
Nice. Well, we're going to take a photo. I'm just admiring your earrings.
Those are so great.
All right. So this is a little weird because we have this podium and I really don't like it in there. So I'm going to put you in the middle.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to open your proclamation.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think I need 2 of you guys in back. So Shannon and, okay. Go. Mayor in the middle. There we go. Perfect. Gotta get in the middle of Jay and here. Should I boss you around anymore? Sorry. Sorry. All right, are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Again. Last one.
Thank you. Yeah, so, did you want to know a little bit about the business? Yes. So I started Missing Puzzle Piece, it's Missing Piece Puzzle Exchange. It's kind of moved around. We started in 2019, our website opened in 2020, and we rent puzzles across the United States, either one-time rentals or subscriptions. And you can also purchase puzzles off the website at puzzleexchange.com. And it's just been great. You guys have been excellent, a great help. Northland has my business, but if you need a puzzle, you can get one at Painted Tree or on our website. So, yeah, no problem. So nice to meet you guys. Thank you very much. So, thank you. Thank you very much. Small business owner here as well. Yeah. Yay.
Okay, our next proclamation, Native American Heritage Month. Diversity, Inclusivity, and Social Equity Board Secretary Tina is here, and board members Autumn and Chase will accept the proclamation. Come on up. Thank you for being here. Okay, this one's a little longer, so just all take a deep breath. Here we go. Okay. Whereas Native American Heritage Month celebrates the accomplishments of the Native people who were the original inhabitants, explorers, stewards, and settlers of land in the United States, and recognizes the more than 100,000 people who identify as American Indian, Alaska Native alone, or in combination with one or more races currently living in Colorado. And whereas, before the arrival of Spaniards in Colorado, the area's vibrant and complex culture and population were made up by a number of native tribes, and we acknowledge that the land currently known as Colorado has been the traditional homelands of indigenous peoples since time immemorial. And whereas, descendants of the Cheyenne, Lakota, Kiowa, Navajo, and at least 200 tribal nations live in the Denver metro area and are an integral part of the state's social and economic life. And whereas, despite centuries of discrimination and unjust federal policies of assimilation, Native American people have persevered and continue to contribute to all areas of life, including government, business, arts and sciences, medicine, education, law enforcement, and the military. And whereas this observance is an important time to honor Native American triumphs and also acknowledge current issues affecting the Native American community, such as a lack of resources leading to poverty and unemployment, exploitation of natural resources on Native lands, education, healthcare, erasure and cultural exploitation, the Indian Child Welfare Act, and missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. And whereas the City of North Glen is committed to equity and inclusion, and it is important to recognize the diverse cultures of our residents, staff, and community members who identify as Native American, Alaska Native, American Indian, Indigenous, First Nation, or First People. And whereas we recognize and celebrate that tribal culture is rich and thriving, successfully connecting the past with future generations through Lifeways education, increasing knowledge and use of native languages, and renewing connections to ancestral homelands. Now, therefore, I, Meredith Leidy, Mayor of the City of North Glen, Colorado, do hereby proclaim November 2022 as Native American Heritage Month in the City of North Glen, and encourage all residents to learn about Native American issues, hear Native voices, and celebrate the Native and Indigenous cultures and people in North Glen, the state of Colorado, and beyond. Dated at North Glen, Colorado, this 14th day of November 2022.
Thank you very much. Pilamaya, thank you to the mayor and the council for this proclamation. There's much to say about the beauty of being Indigenous. The over 500 diverse tribes on Keowita or Turtle Island are a testament to our resilience. To this day, we face many challenges, as the mayor spoke. So with this time, I hope you will allow me to speak briefly on an issue that is very important, the Indian Child Welfare Act, or the ICWA. If you are not already aware, the ICWA's purpose is to keep Native families together and prevent systemic bias. ICWA was enacted in 1978 after studies showed that up to 35% of all Native children had been removed from their families and placed in foster homes with non-Native parents 9 out of 10 times. Currently, this act is being challenged in the Supreme Court. Make no mistake, this law is a part of tribal sovereignty and is vital to protecting our children from colonialism on the heels of the legacy of boarding schools. I beseech you to stay informed and act in any way that you can. This is how we honor and protect Native American heritage. Thank you again for this important proclamation and the opportunity to speak. Wapila Tonka, big thanks.
Picture time. See, look, you guys are doing great. Everyone's doing great. All right, 1, 2, 3. Again. We'll do one more just for good measure. Great.
Actually true. Thank you for staying. Our DICE board members are going to remain. Our next one is the Transgender Awareness Month. Whereas Transgender Awareness Month is a time to celebrate and elevate the voices and experiences of the transgender and gender nonconforming community through education, advocacy, and action. And whereas during this month, we also recognize Transgender Day of Remembrance on November 20th, a day in which transgender people and allies across the globe come together to honor the lives lost to anti-transgender violence. And whereas these efforts are more important than ever as we see our children growing up in a world where equality for all is not yet guaranteed, where transgender students are targeted for mistreatment, where transgender workers routinely face discrimination, and where at least 32 transgender people, mostly women of color, have been killed this year alone from anti-transgender violence. And whereas over 1.6 million adults ages 18 and older and youth ages 13 to 17 identify as transgender in the United States, with an estimated 31,200 people who identify as transgender living in Colorado. And whereas transgender people have existed across cultures throughout history, transgender people are our friends, family, neighbors, and coworkers, deserving of dignity, respect, and the opportunity to thrive. And whereas research shows that transgender youth whose families support their gender identity have a 52% decrease in suicidal thoughts, a 48% decrease in suicide attempts, and significant increases in self-esteem and general health. And whereas we must continue to raise awareness about our gender-expansive community, learn about what it means to be transgender while stopping harmful stereotypes, and educate ourselves on identity, language, and other issues facing transgender people, whether to support a transgender person in our lives or to help change the world to be better for transgender people overall. Now, therefore, I, Meredith Leidy, Mayor of the City of North Glen, Colorado, do hereby proclaim November 2022 as Transgender Awareness Month in the City of North Glen and encourage every community member to continue learning and understanding of the lived experiences of the transgender community and to honor the identities and contributions of transgender individuals. Dated at North Glen, Colorado, this 14th day of November 2022. So thank you, DICE members, for being here. Do you want to add?
Yes, thank you. But you did a great job, actually. Thank you again to the board for creating and honoring this proclamation. There are as many genders as there are people, and trans people have always existed throughout history and across cultures, even if the words used were different. Today, more people than ever feel safe to live their truth and to identify as trans. There has been a lot of backlash to this, But with continued awareness, education, and love, we can create a better, safer society for all of our trans relatives. Finally, I would like to honor and remember the trans women of color that have fought and continue to fight for the trans community. We would not be here without them. Thank you again for all of your work.
All right.
Take my mask off.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Sushi.
1, 2, 3. Again. All right, thank you.
Thank you for having us. We'll be here.
And you got this on?
Okay, well, once again, thank you so much to our DICE board. So we have a presentation tonight by our Diversity, Inclusivity, and Social Equity Board. So come on up.
So it's turned on, so you can just write. Okay, sounds great. I'll do that right there. Okay. Don't be nervous.
Okay, I've been told not to be nervous, so I'm not. You're getting a big dose of DICE tonight.
Yeah, that's great.
So my name is Tina Fischel. I'm the DICE Board Secretary. Thank you for allowing us the time to update you on what we've been working out throughout our second year as a North Glen Board. DICE is here to support council's strategic focus of diversity and use community feedback and input to promote and ensure city incorporation of that input. So as you can see here, we have speakers at some of our monthly meetings to help guide us, and we strive to collaborate with other boards to avoid redundancy. Throughout 2022, we collected survey responses from 187 community members, and you can see some of the results in your packet because it's a little bit hard to see on this screen. Respondents, we'll kind of go through some of these quickly. I wanted to highlight this one because respondents rated members of the Indigenous and LGBTQ plus communities as the least represented in North Glen, closely followed by youth, people with disabilities, and the Asian and Black communities. So we'd like to thank the mayor for making proclamations this evening recognizing the top two groups that were identified in our survey and recognizing the importance of those groups as contributors to the community. We as a board will also strive to address the city, the shortcomings identified by the community, as you'll hear about later in this presentation. So some comments from the survey that are also in your packet that stood out to me were requests to talk more about what we're currently doing to change things. So giving updates not only to council but to the community, hosting more heritage events and minority festivals, land acknowledgement, building relationships with community leaders and organizations that are already doing similar work, which is one of our big goals for the upcoming year, reaching out to schools, and looking for ways to get involved. So hopefully we are able to incorporate all of these things into our work plan for the coming year, which Chase and Autumn will discuss. And we are currently reviewing applications for several of our open positions, so hoping that we'll get a lot more of our community members involved soon. Oh, here you are. Look at you. Okay. Oops, sorry.
Back to the first. Okay. For accomplishments. All right. Hello, it's me again. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what DICE has done this year. We were recognized and included by city departments seeking DICE suggestions and recommendations. We were featured in the North Glen Connection. We incorporated council communications into our meetings. The Odell Berry Park naming was approved. Member participation and youth-led LGBTQIA plus community event at the Parsons Theater. We had a presence at the Adams County Pride event. We created an event where people could come and pick up their own pride signs, which were a big success. Next one, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. We had a presence at the Groove Grub and local gov events, including food truck vouchers. We would give people food truck vouchers whenever they came and did a survey for us. We created lovely swag. We have drafted an anti-hate resolution. Has that been given yet? Okay. Presumably that will come up soon. We accepted proclamations, including today, but we also did Asian American Pacific Islander Month, Pride Month, Juneteenth, Hispanic Heritage Month, and yeah. And we have 1 of 3 positions filled right now. We also hosted Black History Month movie event at Parsons Theater. We provided monetary support for Cleo Parker Robertson Dance, and we both had a presence at the Healing Hoop Powwow and helped get a $2,000 donation for them. We sponsored and recruited talent for the entertainment at the Asian American Pacific Islander event. And yeah, thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Autumn Romero, DICE Community Board member. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we anticipate what we'd like to do in 2023. It's spelled out for you in your packet. I'm going to hit some highlights because I think you all are great at reading, and we don't need to cover every single topic in there. But I think what we found this year, after the first year of COVID, when we had a lot of participation because people were home, locked in their houses, and they wanted to make a difference, we had a lot of participation from our people. That kind of petered off, I think, this year, because as people got back to their lives, some of those things got left behind. And so we've struggled to have absolute buy-in by the people who are on the board. And so as we move forward and start to recruit for the 2023 year, for the 2 additional spots that we have open, I beg of you, when you talk to these people and you interview them, tell them that this is a true commitment, that they have to be involved, that they have to show up to meetings, that they have to be present. Even though we might offer a hybrid in-person meeting and over computer, we can offer those things, but we really need them to be present and active members. So that's something that I really want you to take back for your wards when you have those open positions, to talk to them and really understand where are they coming from, are they gonna actively be there? Because we really need that support, because otherwise it falls on a handful of us at the committee meetings, and it gets really challenging to always be the ones to do it. I love it, and I will be a champion until I can't, but please help us get the word out. So this year, we really want to focus more on being included in celebratory events for the city. And I think that right now we are having a hand in that, but it would be really great to maybe be included on the front end of those conversations instead of at the back end, to make sure that those events are actually inclusive. One other topic we were talking about is being a part of the Mayor's Compact with the Anti-Defamation League. And currently, the signers for Colorado are, I think we have the mayor in Boulder, which is Aaron Brockett, Mayor Michael Hancock in Denver, Mayor Adam Paul in Lakewood, and Kyle, I'm gonna butcher this, Schlachter in Littleton. I think this would be really great for us to look into and be a part of. It really just kind of hits home so many of the issues that our people of color are facing right now. And so it'd be great to kind of add that to city council's repertoire. Additionally, we are going to hit hard what our original work plan was when we first started with what our goals and objectives were. Some of the items that were on there were maybe low-hanging fruit and easy for us to tackle, and I think we're getting to some of the topics now that are more challenging and require a little bit more support from the city. So that is going to be huge. We're going to look at those survey results and try to incorporate those into some of our missions for the 2023 year. A couple of additional items that we would like to highlight is working with our youth a little bit more. We have had a couple of opportunities for them to come and sit in on meetings, but it would be great if we had more interaction with our youth committee here. So that's something that we want to solidify and hopefully bring those young voices into the fold because, I mean, we saw what they did for the midterms, so good job, youth. All right, and as we hit deeper into our 2023 plans, when I talk about some of those things that are a little more challenging for us to conceptualize and bring to life, one of those is hosting an annual education series. And that is gonna take partnership with a variety of agencies outside of North Glen, not just in North Glen. And it's gonna take some funding, so hopefully we get budget money that we can specifically allocate, and part of that is, we want to provide stipends to our teachers who come in and work with the community. We know that food is a great way to sit with our community members. It's how we show we love each other, and so part of that educational series will be having food present, maybe enticing our community members to come in, do a raffle, those types of things would be really great. I've reached out to a few other organizations, and so I'm waiting to hear back to see how we can start that partnership. What does that timeline look like? I don't think we can get anything realistically on the books before June, but I am cautiously optimistic about that. But that is one of our big pilots for 2023. We would like some additional updates on the crisis response unit because we think that it's critical that we're funneling people outside of police custody. We want to make sure that they're getting the help that they need. And so I know that this was huge for this year, getting those roles filled, but now we want to see how it's performing and how can we actively provide feedback to make sure that it's operating the way that it should. We are also working on finalizing our land acknowledgement, and we're hoping that it's not just a performatory thing that we do at events. We want to make sure that we are honoring Indigenous peoples. When we do something like this, it has to be true, and there has to be a give and take in that relationship. So that is something that is huge. Chase is heading that up, and she's doing a great job. Excuse me. And that is what I have. Excuse me. In your packet, you should see something about the budget, and we broke down a few items in there. It just kind of talks about what we're really looking to fund, which is more merchandise, which helps us at any local events here in the city, gives out our contact information. Sorry, I need a water, but I will be okay.
I'll get you one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So really, it's going to be hitting the facilitating the training, the educational series, more training for the board members, and as we bring on new people, sponsorship opportunities and collaborations. Merchandise, merchandise, merchandise. People love it, and you would be surprised. We have a lot of people that look for our contact information. So as we've purchased some items, we're learning what works best and how to make sure our contact information is on there. So those are some of our items. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kondo?
Yes. So I sit here, first of all, thank you for presenting. I don't know if you're taking any questions. Yeah, we can't let you go away that easily. First of all, I want to applaud you for all the work that you're doing. And being a person of a business mind and coming from a large company, Becton Dickinson, where we've really incorporated a lot of inclusion, diversity, equity within the last 2 years, and trying to get certified as one of the top 50 or top 100 ICE or inclusion, diversity, equity rated firms. I'm just thinking aloud here, but we have PROST that's coming into the city. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to partner with NERA and connect with the leadership of PROST to see if you can help them figure out how to apply for, an application to be considered a inclusion, diversity, equity favored business. So I just throw that out there as something that you can think about as maybe an initiative you could do in 2023.
Do you know when they're planning to break ground over there?
They're already improving the building. So I think you can get in touch with Debbie Tuttle, and maybe she can get you in touch with the right people.
Debbie Tuttle has been a speaker at one of our meetings in the past, so it would be nice for us to continue partnerships with agencies and other boards, both official, like staffed by North Glen and volunteers within North Glen, as well as some of the nonprofit groups that have gone into the community center at Crossroads. So I thank you for that suggestion, and we'll take that back, and we're starting to form a directory of people to try to stay in touch with so that we're not functioning as an isolated group, and we are sought out for advice and at the front end of events and other developments like you're talking about.
Absolutely. Great. Great work that you're doing.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Councilmember Lukman Haramasa.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I just want to say the Asian American Pacific Islander Festival was one of my favorites besides Pirate Fest. I really enjoyed that, and you did a fantastic job putting that together. But I also wanted to just throw out there that I am the liaison to the Youth Commission, and so I've been to a couple of meetings that you guys have worked together. If that's something that you want to continue to work with them, then I'll make sure that they get to know that and understand that, and maybe we can coordinate some more meetings, and I'll let the staff liaison know. But I just wanted to let you know that I think that's fantastic. You're doing a great job, and as a woman who is of Latina, Indigenous American, and African descent, and then Irish and German as well, I really appreciate what you're doing, so thank you.
I also really appreciate the presentation tonight. I did have a quick question. You had mentioned something about budget. I can't find that in the packet.
It was in the original, but I think it got cut.
It didn't get cut. You have a budget of $20,000. So I think the request that you're not officially making a request of council. You have that money. So
And that flows into 2023?
yes.
Councilmember Jaramillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate all the work that you do in the community. I've seen you very active, and as the liaison for the Arts and Humanities Foundation Board, I'd love to work more with you.
Yes, I see you at Chac
Yes.
last weekend.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So my dad's one of the co-founders of Chalk, so I have a love and passion for promoting and preserving arts and culture for the future. So I think that we could see more collaboration, and we can really create more of a holistic and bringing everything together to create the vision that we seek to see. So yeah, my name is Jay Jaramillo, so let's work together.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Goff?
I'm just going to say thanks. Thanks for coming out. I know you three, I mean, and the four of you here have always worked so hard. And like Autumn was saying, There's some, like a reliable core of people, so we appreciate your effort. Thank you.
And I also wanted to thank you for your thorough presentation. That really helped us get up to speed. The survey, I saw a lot of celebrations. There's definitely some actionable items there, so thank you for sharing that with us. And I just wanted to put a plug. I also think the Pride event should come back to North Glen.
I agree. Yeah.
If anyone's listening, because
That came up several times.
Yeah, I've had quite a few people actually reach out to me, Sue. So I support that. Anyone cares? I'm looking at Heather like.
We
If
absolutely were
council
really
would like to
disappointed.
give me would like to provide consensus for me to work with Dice Board and Tamara and figure out how to make that happen, we're happy to do so.
Please, please, please.
Okay.
Yeah, it was such a good first year, and we had so much good feedback from it. And then when we heard Adams County was taking it far away, and I know we had some people go out and man a booth out there, it just wasn't the same. I really think we had a more family feel community event that people were so grateful that it was just right here. So let's bring it back.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Okay, moving into public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment on any item not set for public hearing. Statements are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements must be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. Joanna, has anyone signed up to speak to council tonight?
Yes, we have one individual by the name of Chris Baum who has signed up.
Okay, come on up. Welcome.
I kind of hate to be a naysayer, but I find because I love many things about this city, but I find it distressful when I'm confronted with things the government does that makes me uneasy, and Transgender Awareness Month is one of these things. I feel it intrudes into family cohesiveness, since it implies that children should be looking at themselves and saying, should I be a different gender? I have a 13-year-old step-grandson who looks and acts very effeminate. He is also very masculine in many ways. He loves competition and is a great badminton player. I think his gender should be a matter for him, his parents, and possibly a medical or psychological professional to address if it needs addressing at all. I myself pushed a baby carriage with my toy babies when I was a child, never had any pressure at all to say, well, maybe you should be a girl. Having government get into this area is beyond its areas of responsibility, and while it could be helpful to the community, and I cannot see how, I feel there is great danger of it being detrimental. I have never heard of transgender persons suffering from bias in the community, although I'm sure it exists, but I have heard many stories of children who attempt gender change being dreadfully sorry they had irreversible surgery and hormone treatments. And I think another reason to avoid events such as Transgender Awareness Month is that the administration of such things takes valuable time away from more important matters. I myself avoid attending council meetings as so much time is devoted to what I consider trivial and distracting matters. We have more important things to work on, such as crime, roads, trash treatment, water management, and building codes. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nope. Okay. We're going to move into communications. We will start with Councilmember Walker tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll start off with the Legislative Committee, which met tonight. After the election, we had two ballot measures that passed that may be of concern to us. Down the road, obviously, the income tax reduction passed, and so that could play into, or something we should keep an eye on. Also, Prop 123 passed, which means we'll be getting smaller refunds. There's also a provision in there that if we wanted to opt in and be aggressive with the, I believe it was 3% growth for affordable housing, we could do that, but if we don't, there is a clause in that we may not get as much funding for affordable housing. So it's something we need to keep an eye out for the future. There's another one that might be of concern down the road. Governor Polis is really trying to circumvent local control and limiting single-family developments, limiting parking at new developments to force people towards transit. So it's He's really trying to go around the local control, so it's something we need to keep an eye on going forward. And that's all I have from the legislative committee. But I have a few other ones from NADA as well. Ms. Sarah asked me to bring up a request we got from Smart Commute regarding the Wagon Road and 144th Flex Ride. They're about 15,000 short for 2023. They're requesting various jurisdictions to pick up some of that slack. The request for Northglenn is $1,214, and that's based on the number of Northglenn residents that use the Flex Ride service. And so they're even talking about a potential yearly contribution, but there isn't specific plans for that yet. So it'd like to be something we can talk about later, if that's okay with everyone else, to make up that gap of $1,214, or at least have a discussion about it.
When you say later, do you mean this evening or?
Could we move it to the 28th meeting? Is that okay? Ms. Sarah's gonna provide some more memos and things for us too. She just kind of wanted to bring this up to our attention. As far as the last NADA meeting, unfortunately, there was no exciting or beneficial news about doing any work to I-25 that would help everyone here in the North Metro. There is some things such as the bus staying. We'll be getting some intermediate stops instead of having the buses pull over to the right, having to exit and re-entry to the highway. There will be exits in the median is what their plan is, and they will be using the express lane, and that brings up some different issues, obviously, with the express lane traffic having to weave around the buses, and so they're still in discussion planning that, but it does look like a very nice compromise. But they're also adding 25 electric bikes to Adams County. We did just get that approved, so the sites have not been released yet, but once I know, I'll let you guys know. And that is all I have for my updates tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Witkevich?
Thank you, Mayor. Three very quick things from me. I guess since we met last, we had the AdCog dinner on October 26th. We had the Business Appreciation Awards on October 27th, which was a great event. I was honored to present an award to Animal Clinic North and also a raffle winner, which was lots of fun. And finally, on November 10th, just last week, I attended the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting. They held interviews for their 2 vacancies for Wards 2 and 3, and they will be putting forth a recommendation to us to appoint Morel Madrid in Ward 2 and Mary Peary in Ward 3, who we might remember, she also applied for the position that Councilmember Kondo has now filled. That's all I've got this evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Jaramillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended the Northglenn Arts and Humanities Foundation Annual Retreat, and proud to say that we're operating so well that we'll be leaving from a Tier 3 to a Tier 2 in the SCFD funding. So we'll have a larger budget, over $1 million, to continue the cultural arts programming that we provide here in Northglenn. And also our NYT, that's the Northglenn Youth Theater Academy, has doubled in the amount of young people attending or learning in those courses. So see a lot more people are becoming involved, and that's also Northglenn Arts Presents. That's when we bring in organizations such as Cleo Parker, Su Teatro, and other organizations. There's been over 4,000 attendees, so that's a success. So we see that the multicultural programming and other programming has been very effective, with over $75,000 in ticket revenue. And I also attended the Business Appreciation event as well, and there's over 250 people who attended it, those in the community and then with the business, and it was very, very nice, and I'm looking forward to it next year. And other than that, that was about it, just those two for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. November 3rd, I did attend Northglenn High School's problem-based learning presentations, I guess. And the topic this time was on student vaping, so it was very interesting. I know we had our own youth commission work a couple of years ago to look into some ways that we could address some problems there. And so they had some very creative ideas about how to discourage people not to start vaping or encourage people to stop vaping, and it was really focused at the high school. But very interesting. And then November 10th was our Ward 3 meeting, and it was well-attended. We had a fantastic presentation by North Metro Fire District on how we can make our homes here in North Glen safer from fire. So that was, I hope, if you don't come to the ward meetings, you don't get all this great information. So I'm just going to put in a plug for the next one. And November 11th, we had our Veterans Day ceremony outside here, which was very moving. We had a Native American veteran as the main speaker, and our own honorable council member Kondo, who is a veteran. So that was a wonderful experience. And I just wanted to also put in a plug, or my own version of saying thank you about the Transgender Awareness Proclamation. Since I have a transgender family member, I think it's really important that we include, we're just asking people to be aware. And I know there's different sides to almost any topic you can pick, but to not just deny that, but to let people have the awareness to make their own decision or the opportunity to learn more about it. So that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unfortunately, Dr. Goff stole my thunder. But yes, on November 10th, I did have the opportunity to speak, but I was not the main speaker. I thought that Mr. Doug Goodfeather, who was the Indian American First Nation person who spoke, gave a very touching, much more impactful speech than I could ever give. So I wanted to acknowledge and thank him for doing that as we commemorated Veterans Day. I do have a warm, good feeling sort of story to tell you, and that was as I was walking to the spaghetti dinner, one resident pulled me aside. She's a widower. She had all kinds of yard waste that she could not deal with on her own, and she mentioned Don. I didn't get the last name from M&O, who, when she called the M&O folks, he came over promptly and took that yard waste away. And so that really warmed the cockles of my heart. And I wanted to make sure that, Don, if you're out there, you're getting some recognition for all the good work that you are doing. Also, on that same day, I too was in the Ward 3 meeting. I thought it was very useful, and certainly as the liaison for North Metro Fire Rescue District, having Deputy Chief Bybee and then Bat Chief Scott McCabe, who is a specialist in wildfire fighting, come and talk to our residents how to harden homes and make them less prone to catching fire if, God forbid, we ever had a similar sort of Marshall Fire incident. So I do want to give a shout out to North Metro Fire, and I'll actually be attending their board meeting tomorrow, so I will personally express my thanks on behalf of the city. And then lastly, going back in time on 10/26 doubleheader event, both Councilmember Walker and myself had breakfast with our city manager, Heather Geyer, and that is part of my effort to kind of improve the communication and get to know other members of the council and be able to kind of talk with Heather offline. And I think that was a very productive session. I hope, Nick, you agree with me there. And then after that, both him and I joined Council Members Yaramillo, Lukman Hiramasa, and Golf at our wastewater treatment facility where North Metro has their training firefighting training center. And I don't know how you all felt, but certainly being in a room with a flame and then watching it being put out hopefully gave you a better appreciation of what firefighters go through. I certainly experienced some pain after that event. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. I'm glad to say nobody got any burnt hair or anything. But they did ask us to drag around a dummy and sling a sledgehammer at a simulated barricaded door, and I felt some pain for a couple days afterwards. So it just gave me some appreciation about how important it is for physical fitness for our firefighters and our first responders. Certainly, I don't think I can do it. And that's all I have to report now.
Thank you. Councilmember Lukman Hiramasa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I will apologize. I've been traveling for the last 2 weeks, just got in a few hours ago, and articulation is like one of the first things that seems to go when I'm tired. So I will try to get through this. Bear with me, please. Let's see, so I have something really fun to share. On October 25th, Councilmember Condo and I attended, along with a bunch of staff from the city, the American Public Works Association award event. And Northland did receive a fantastic award for the Public Works project in the medium community structures for our recreation center. So this is the award, thought we would show it off. It was a really fun event. And thank you to all the staff for just creating such an incredible facility that it earned this award. There you go, yay! I also attended the AdCog dinner along with several of my fellow council members. On October 26th, I also attended, as Councilmember Kondo mentioned, the North Metro Fire Rescue Department Academy tour. And yes, I also pulled the dummy. It was very heavy, and I slung the sledgehammer. And just so you all should be proud of me, I got it just like the guys did. I'm pretty proud of that. It took me a few tries, but it was great, as Councilmember Kondo mentioned, to see just how intense their training is and what they need to go through to keep our community safe, and I appreciate all of those guys. Let's see, and they call themselves the North Side, so I thought that was pretty fun. On October 27th, I also attended the Business Appreciation event and handed out the award to Painted Tree Boutiques, which is one of my favorite places. Shop small business, holidays coming around. On October 28th, Mayor Pro Tem Wilford and I attended, got to help host the Northmore Elementary Welcome in City Tour. She was dressed up as a traffic cone, and I was dressed up as a street crew worker. The kids were just the best. I don't even know how many were in attendance, but their questions were thoughtful and intelligent and funny. And we asked them what they thought our budget would be, and they started at $100 because they thought that was a lot of money. And we kept going up, and $1,000, we're like, no way. Then one said 50 billion, and we're like, that's too much. And they finally got it. One kid got it right on the nose, 125 million. I was like, these kids are something else. So I was very grateful to have that opportunity to help our young students learn about what we do here in our city. And they did take a tour of the other city facilities as well. Last couple more things. On October 28th, I had a lunch meeting with our district attorney, Brian Mason, and city manager Geyer, and Councilmember Kondo as well. And it was just a really great informal lunch and educational in terms of learning, what the DA does and how they work with different departments and how our police department works with the DA and so forth. And then we spent a lot of time talking about youth diversion programs as well and adult diversion programs. And the DA has a program right now that has, I believe, and you can help me on this because I didn't write it down, I was looking for it. I believe it's a 95% success rate is what's sticking in my head, which is very high, which means it's working and prevents rates of recidivism. So that brings me to my next request from council. In the conversation, it was brought up that perhaps Northland can work with the DA in some of these diversion programs. So the request would be to have consensus for City Manager Geyer to work with Chief and Judge Bailhash and the DA to evaluate the evaluate the diversion program opportunity. It will be a 2023 issue, but if council is okay, then they can get more information and see if it's something that Northland can buy into or not. Okay. Thank you. And then today we had the Legislative Colleague Committee meeting, and Councilmember Walker reported out on that. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to do a throwback just because I've been out at professional conferences for the last couple weeks. So I just wanted to do another shout out to our police department for Safe Street Halloween. We're going back. I just didn't get an opportunity. I love that event. It seemed like it was extremely popular this year. And it's one of my favorite community events. So I just wanted to thank our department for throwing that. I did also attend the Veterans Day celebration, and I wanted to thank the American Legion Post 22. They do such an amazing job of partnering with us for that event. And I really appreciate their service and definitely their participation in our celebration. Metro Mayor's Caucus, our executive committee met. We're planning our annual retreat, but we also did our annual Habitat for Humanity Build Day, which is becoming one of my favorite things. And so the mayors from around the metro area met, and we worked really hard with Habitat for Humanity, and I was quite proud of myself. I put siding all up the side of a house. It was very exciting to start something and finish it. Sometimes we don't get to do that in our work, so. But it was also lovely to hear more about the organization and how they support affordable housing in the metro area, so it was just a great day. And I think that's all I have for tonight. City Manager Guyer, how about you?
Nothing this evening, Mayor and Council.
Joanna?
I do have a quick item. On October 28th, I was fortunate enough to participate in one of the problem-based learning events over at North Glen High School. And it was regarding misinformation and elections, so super interesting for me. Part of the panel of judges who heard the solutions also included Cassie Riggle, who supports the Youth Commission here, and Clerk and Recorder Josh Ziegelbaum, along with a couple representatives from the school district. And I saw the Clerk and Recorder taking notes, which was great because those students had both really straightforward solutions and then some really creative solutions as far as how they would provide unbiased election information to young voters. So it was really fun. It was my first PBL that I participated in. So that was a great event. And then really quickly also, I also participated in the Northmore Elementary School tours. Super fun because the students were very engaged, as well as the chaperones, which I totally appreciated. And Councilmember Jaramillo, there were a couple folks in one of the groups that were relatives of yours, and they were so thrilled to take a picture in front of your chair on the dais, so that was fun too. They were, yeah, so that was fun as well. That's all I have.
That's awesome, thank you. Corey, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, but nothing this evening, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All right, Jason Loveland, come on down for the September 2022 financial report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you just mentioned, quick update on the third quarter financial situation or status of the city. I'll start off with an update on sales and use tax. As you can see on the graph in front of you, the kind of thicker dark blue line kind of riding the top wave is 2022. Overall, sales and use tax is up just under 7% on the year. These are through August collections, as everything is collected in arrears 1 month. Couple of items to point out. We touch on some of the bigger items. Auto use tax through this month was still down like 1.3%, but closing it's the margin that we had seen throughout the year on the auto sales. Sales tax specifically is up 8.8%, food tax up 5.5%, and then marijuana tax, which we'll see on the next slide, down 17%. In the other report, the geographic codes that we talk about, what's going on within our boundaries, those are up. Sales and use tax up 4.7%. A couple of areas that are down 5% to note: Washington Point and Washington East. So really, Washington and 120th. Both of those are down about 5% through the year. Here you can see, want to pay attention, I guess, to the dotted line there, which is 2022. You can kind of see the marijuana tax revenue collections month over month over the past several years. Fluctuates quite a bit on a year-over-year basis, but once a year kind of gets going, it's pretty steady. Decline started happening in 2021 after July, kind of slid downward. And then 2022, again, the dotted line has kind of stayed relatively steady on a month-to-month basis, but again, down 17%, something that we've been talking about a little bit throughout the year. I'll touch on the funds. Not too many notes on any of these in particular, but the general fund, total revenues of $24.5 million collected through September, and total expenditures of $22.5 million. The other financing sources, uses, that's the line item that we account for transfers, specifically to the capital projects fund. So you'll see a large number there. On the far right side, the collection and spending rate, I did go through and verify all of those are in alignment with historical collection or spend rates as far as where we would be through 3/4 of the year. I was going to point out on the user charges and fees, that is actually up a fair amount. A significant amount of that, about $700,000 of recreation center fees and charges. Again, comparing it to the prior year, I was down with COVID and the closure and the timing of the new facility opening. But we are seeing the revenue as we had projected so far through the year. So happy to see that with user charges and fees. Any questions on the general fund, or I'll skip to the next? Or we can go back at the end also. Next, Conservation Trust Fund. So these are lottery proceeds, collection. Year to date, $365,000. I'd imagine after the $2 billion a couple weeks ago, we'll see a spike in that maybe at some point. Total expenditures, the $74,200 represents the investment that we've made so far in the Greenway Trail. That's the only expenditure out of Conservation Trust Fund thus far in 2022. And then on the Capital Projects Fund, total revenues of just under $8 million, expenditures of $2.7 million. That third line you'll see is the net change, or not the net change, other financing sources and uses. So those are actually the sources, which counts for the transfers in from the general fund that we just saw on that line, as well as about $1 million worth of debt service payments that we've made on the interest portions of the Justice Center and the Recreation Center. We make those payments in June. There's also full detail, not in the slide presentation, but on your usual report that outlines every project and the spending. In the water fund, total revenues of $11.4 million, expenditures of $8.2 million. Water consumption, so the user charges and fees line, is up slightly, about 5%. Consumption is up 2% through the month. So I think we had quite a bit of consumption increase early on in the year, and kind of as we've gone on, it's kind of leveled out total consumption of water. So again, collection and spending rate in this fund, especially on the operational side, in line, that's 68 to 78% of spending being done. Capital outlay, you'll notice there's some big projects budgeted, so the spending rate's only about 16%. Those are projects that carry over from year to year and eventually will be spent. On the wastewater fund, total revenues $4.1 million. Again, total expenditures of 8.2. Large item there, $6.2 million spent on capital outlay with some large projects for the lift station and force main. Otherwise, nothing extraordinary to report in this fund. Stormwater fund, $379,000 of revenue, expenditures of $104,000. Again, both in line. You'll see that the revenue budget seems pretty high of $743,000. $250,000 of that is grant funds expected to be received from ARPA. So that's a project for Huron Street. The stormwater portion, we budgeted $250,000. So we'll have that expenditure and revenue happening once we complete that portion of the project. So that will come into play later on as that project gets going. And then the sanitation fund, last fund here. Total revenues, year-to-date, $1.4 million, expenditures of $2 million. In line with budget, expenditures, large capital outlay with getting those trash trucks. But otherwise, operationally, all things are in alignment with what we would expect. And then last slide here, just to summarize, roll that up. Sales tax through August up 8.8%. Total general fund revenue is up over 11%. And then as I've mentioned, pretty much on every slide, operating expenditures are in line with budget and in comparison with prior years. So we feel pretty comfortable with where we're at so far this year. And that is all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Kondo.
So, Jason, thanks for that report. I'm really delighted to know that our expenditures are pretty much in line with budget. I'm just kind of curious, though, as we look forward to a more kind of austere economic winter and increasing prices, inflation, and things like that. Can you just refresh my memory as we develop the budget for next year? I think we built in various programs and things like that, some gravy or margin to account for increasing prices of raw material, direct labor, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
We did it to the tune, each department was, tasked with identifying, those different materials and things that they're seeing. Big departments, Public Works, a lot of different materials. I think that their budget came in about 7% higher to account for some of those inflationary factors. Of course, nobody can necessarily predict the future, but that was what we were seeing currently or forecasting to see as we move forward again, with fuels and things of that nature that really spiked over the summer, kind of lowered in the last couple of months and are on the rise again during the holidays. Those are expected to be on the decline in 2023, but we did make an effort to.
So anecdotally, if I were to communicate with the public, can I say, yeah, we built in about a high single-digit sort of buffer or gravy to account for future rises in costs? Would that be a good characterization?
But yes, that
High
is.
single digits?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
I do not see any more hands.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open. I will close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
All right, let's get down to it. We have 5 ordinances. We are going to start with the first one, CB 1993. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A bill for a special ordinance amending the 2022 budget, recognizing revenues and appropriating expenditures by supplemental appropriation for the payment of the costs and expenses of the municipal government, agencies, and offices of the City of North Glen, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2022.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, welcome back to the podium.
Thank you. So the supplemental appropriation before you here on first reading is really to address a couple of the topics that we've had over the past month or so. So these have all been brought forward and discussed with council. The first, City Hall construction, you'll see an expenditure of out of the general fund for a transfer to capital projects fund of $5.5 million. Then again, in the capital projects, total new spending of $8.9 million, which was discussed at the last meeting. So $5.5 million from the general fund reserves, $2 million of the 0.5% sales tax that is accounted for in the capital projects fund, And then $1.4 million of the 4% special marijuana tax that's also accounted for in the capital projects fund. So that is where you get to the 8.9 million of total new spending for the city hall. Additionally, we're recognizing revenue in the capital projects fund for not only the city hall transfer from the general fund, but $2.4 million in a federal grant that we had received in the prior year. We just hadn't come forward to council to get that appropriation. The Thornton IGA for 120th Avenue, and then the Carl's Farm Developers Cost Share Agreement. Again, Brooke spoke to that a few weeks ago. So these are all the new revenues that are going to come into the capital projects fund, and then the related expenditure to account for the inflationary costs of that project of $6.7 million that will come out of various sources in that fund, general fund, prior transfers, the Adams County Transportation Tax, and our 4 mills that's restricted to road reconstruction projects. And then the last item, Stormwater Race Street Outfall Project. That's really connected with Carl's Farm Development and the 120th, and this is just a sub-project of that larger $17 million project that is not being federally funded or part of the shared cost agreement. So in the stormwater fund, there is funds to cover this, $738,000, which will really just tie all of that project together. And then, with council approval, which staff recommends, there'll be a public hearing held on November 28th. I can answer any questions that you may have.
I do not see any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open. We'll close that vote, and CB 1993 on first reading passes unanimously.
This is almost completely the Jason show.
Yeah.
All right, CB 1994. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A bill for an ordinance amending Article 3 of Chapter 5 of the North Glen Municipal Code regarding sales and use tax licensing.
Move for approval. Second.
All right, Jason, take it away.
Alrighty. So this sales and use tax license requirements really is stemming from Senate Bill 22032, which was attached to your memo. Really, that was a bill that eliminates local authority to require business licenses for I'm going to say out-of-state or out-of-town vendors, those that do not have a brick or mortar within your boundary. Really, this is part of the Sales Tax Simplification Act extension to allow for really businesses that are online, if you will, to interface within the state more easily, rather than getting 72 business licenses for every, home rule municipality. The requirement is you get one state license, and that will suffice to do business in the state. So part of what's before you is for us to change our ordinance to adhere to that Senate bill. And then additionally, since there's no fee or license requirement from the state through the Senate bill, we also spoke internally as staff, and then that was presented to the Finance Committee on September 27th, to eliminate the business license fee for all businesses within the city. We want to do that to help, if you will, level the playing field for the local businesses. We do still want to maintain the license requirement on an annual basis. That allows the city to stay connected and build those relationships with those that are most local in doing business with the city. But with the intent of eliminating the $15 annual fee, but maintaining that requirement to complete a license. It helps economic development and finance. I think the city as a whole know who's doing business within the city, and really it's a partnership, the businesses and the city. So it's important to maintain that connection there. So this was presented to, like I said, the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee, I don't want to totally speak for them, but they did support this idea of bringing it forward to council for approval. So any questions on this one? Okay.
We're good. Thank you. Joanna, please open the vote.
The vote is open. We'll close that vote, and CB 1994 on first reading passes unanimously.
Okay, CB 1995.
A bill for an ordinance amending Section 6-2-4 of the North Glen Municipal Code, increasing the city manager's spending authority.
Move for approval.
Second.
All righty, here I go. So the Finance Committee has been busy, so they've been evaluating the purchasing policy earlier in the year. Part of that evaluation, there's a section that also discusses the city manager's spending authority. Staff and the committee on September 27th also discussed potential increase to the city manager's spending authority. The committee agreed at the time to $75,000, an increase from $50,000. In the memo, I've just presented a handful of surrounding jurisdictions and their authority. So staff recommends approval unless council has other ideas on what the spending authority should be.
No, we did talk about it. No question. Thank you. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. I will close that vote, and CB 1995 on first reading passes unanimously.
Okay, CB 1996.
A bill for an ordinance approving a water and wastewater rate change for the city of North Glen.
Move for approval.
Second.
All righty. So this next one, water and water rate increases over the next 5-year period. So in 2017, the city contracted with Stantec Consulting to complete a water and wastewater study, largely based off of an infrastructure study and evaluation that was completed in 2011. So these studies and plans, specifically like on the engineering side, outline, future reinvestment into the infrastructure. So our infrastructure now is 40, 50 years old, and we need to make plans to reinvest. So in that study, there was a 10-year plan established. We had implemented, starting in 2018, the first 5 years of that plan. This past year, we've evaluated internally kind of the merits and warrants of that plan for the next 5 years. At this time, we believe that we can continue the study that was completed and approved at that time with those suggested rate increases. In the memo, there's an update, and I think you've all seen it during the budget process on our 5-year CIP plan. 2025 through 2027, there's significant investment in clarifiers, digesters, and an additional lift station replacement to the tune of about $37 million. 2028 through 2031, again, significant investment in clarifiers. Some of these are requirements that are handed down from Colorado Department of Health and Environment. Some are from EPA, so some of these are regulatory. Some of these are replacement of aging infrastructure. So my goal as the finance director is to plan for these and allow for the most minimal impact to the customer as possible. So that is the reason why there's a 10-year study, and to implement slowly over time rather than wait until the year that you need a large increase and hit people with double-digit, 10, 15, 20% increases to rates. That's something that, is felt, definitely trying to avoid that in any one year, but knowing that we have these targets that we need to get to over time. So on the second page of the memo, there's a summary of the average consumption. So again, this is just average, so some of you will say, hey, that's not my average. Totally understand, but citywide, the average winter consumption is 5,000 gallons. So you can see there in the chart, that bill going up $2.33 a month. So that's water and sewer combined. And then in the summer, average customer use is 15,000 gallons. And you can see that during the summer period, you'll see an increase of about $3.48 per month. So with that, staff is proposing and having council consider the increase and the increase plan. So one time today, over the next 5 years. Obviously, have to put a disclaimer that these rates after 2023 are subject to change with construction prices as we move into the future. It's obviously very hard to predict what prices will be in 2028, but we've put our best effort into trying to project those and feel comfortable with this rate plan at this time be adopted. So from there, I can answer any
Okay.
questions.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two questions. My first question was, my first month on board, I came into your office to understand a little bit about this, but when you said that you did the Stantec consulting piece in 2017, was that the software also that you showed me? Did that come from them, or did that software projection program come from somewhere else? And I wonder if for the benefit for the rest of the days, you can just explain that. And I would assume that's how you did your modeling.
Right.
To be able to account for the future expense, but yet be able to model over time a ramp up in user fees.
Yes, so the original study was done by Stantec, kind of a static model that sits there. The past couple of years, we've invested in a program called Waterworth, which really allows for continuous rate modeling software, which we're able to plug in actuals from our utility billing software and fine tune those projections over time. So rather than stop and pause and do another rate study while we've already had a study, we're just using that as a validation tool to make sure that we'll be on track. So a lot of continuous rate modeling, I think, is kind of the next generation of doing those types of studies. If you have staff on board that can handle that, that's the goal, is so that we can be more nimble to adapt to changing environments.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question, just looking at the first page of the ordinance, I've lived in some cities where they'll establish the tier one based off of, the user's consumption of, say, water averaged in the month of January, February. It looks like here we're arbitrarily just setting at 3,000 gallons. Any rhyme or reason, if you can help me understand that?
So which section are you looking at, sorry?
So page 3 of 6, the
Okay.
first page of CB 1996.
Okay.
Under
so-
consumption range, it says first 3,000 gallons.
Oh, correct. So the tier is $4.16. So this is the current rates, but it's $4.16 for the first 3,000 gallons. So if you do only use 1,000 gallons, you would just be charged at that rate of $4.16 per 1,000.
Right, but how did you
Well, the
determine
break-even
setting
point?
at 3,000? Yeah.
So that was actually established long ago when the city created its tiered rate structure. And I'm not sure exactly what during that study at that time the breaking points were. But that is definitely, as you see, part of the goal for the city is conservation. And so the lower the tier at the bottom level creates a desire to conserve as you move through the tiers. And at the time, 3,000 gallons was the breaking point.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open. We'll close that vote, and CB 1996 on first reading passes unanimously.
Okay, CB 1997. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A bill for an ordinance amending Section 18-2-3 of the North Glen Municipal Code concerning manager registration for liquor licensed establishments.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, our city clerk, Joanna Small, has a summary.
All righty, good evening, Mayor and City Council. So as the title says, this bill is regarding manager registration for liquor licensed establishments. During the 2022 legislative session, House Bill 1415 was passed, which changes how managers register or report with the state and local authorities. So the bill did several things. It removed the ability of the local and state licensing authorities to deny a manager registration based on the character, record, and reputation of the proposed manager. It allows licensees holding multiple liquor licenses to appoint one manager to oversee multiple establishments. It reduced the fee associated with the reporting from $75 to $30, and it also removed the penalty for failure to report a manager change. So to stay compliant with the Colorado Liquor Code, the ordinance has been drafted. There is one variance, and that is the state focuses on manager reports for on-premises liquor licenses, and the ordinance as drafted would require manager reporting for all liquor licensed establishments in North Glen. And that was done so that staff would have a current point of contact for all licenses. The ordinance has been presented to the Liquor Licensing Authority at their November 3rd, 2022 meeting, and they approved a resolution recommending council adoption of the ordinance as drafted. If it's approved on first reading, a public hearing and second reading will be scheduled for November 28th, and staff recommends approval on first reading. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do not see any. Thank you. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. I will close that vote, and CB 1997 on first reading passes unanimously.
We have three resolutions tonight. The first one, CR 167. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A resolution approving an agreement between the City of North Glen and Imperial Custom Concrete for the Traffic Calming Improvements Project.
Move for approval.
Second.
Kent Kisselman, our Director of Public Works, is here to provide a summary. Hi, Kent.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Did you say 167?
Yeah.
164.
Okay.
Sorry. Did I misspeak?
Sorry. Not a big deal. I was just looking at my sheet and I was standing up and then I sat
I
back
don't
down.
know.
I was like.
164, my apologies.
So, so traffic calming improvements, and these are really the evolution of our no need for speed program. So you'll notice on here, the 112th Place, Marion Street, Cuivas, and Irma and Malley was, brought up by Councilmember Brown, and we all agreed to take a look at that area. So these three areas, or four areas, are really going to be a good testament of the tools in our toolbox of what we can use in the evolution of this program. So we have, the continuation of some speed tables on 112th and Clarkston, which will tie in with Claude. We got the rotary going in over on Marion Street. And we have some on Quivus, we're gonna do some curb extensions, so we haven't done those before, so that'll be a new item. And these are permanent measures, so these are the measures that during the meetings and, beginning that no need for speed program, meeting with the residents, providing them the options, collecting the votes, and letting them choose. Now, I'll be the first to say that not everybody voted for these, but the majority and the street commanders, they were the street captains, they were the ones who determined what was going to be done in these areas. And so we did do the votes, and then towards the tail end, we went one more step further, and we sent out the brochure that you see in there for each individual ward, and just to see if there was any further votes or concerns on what was going in. And they were consistent with the voting that had already been completed. So we went ahead with, bidding this project. I will give a shout out since Sergeant Shub is here. He's attended all of the No Need for Speed programs in all of the wards, and it is a tremendous undertaking to be at those meetings if you've been at those. So we did go out for bid on this, and Imperial Custom Concrete provided us a bid, and they did our concrete work in 2021, and so we're very confident with their work. Including contingency of 10%, they're asking for $279,642. And we're looking for approval as presented. And I'll answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Lukman Hiramasa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have been to several of those meetings, so I know how much work you all put in and seen Officer Shoup there many times. I was just trying to remember what a curb extension is. I know it's not quite relevant, but I kind of remember it during a meeting, but don't remember.
Yeah, so.
The name implies something.
Yeah, it'll just kind of be a bump out of the curb, just deflecting instead of going in a straight line, they'll just have to traverse around a little curb that comes out, think of it like a pork chop, kind of up here where you turn into, the promenade. And there's or you're turning out of the promenade, there's that little pork chop there in the middle. Kind of take that pork chop and put it on a curb, and that's how you would traverse around the curb.
Fantastic. I live kind of close to that. So
The official name is kind of a chicane, is kind of the engineering technical term of what we've used in our toolbox in previous meetings, but I like pork chop.
Thank you. That's the only question I had.
All right, I don't see any other questions. Thank you. Please open the vote.
Vote is open. We'll close that vote, and CR 164 passes unanimously.
Thank you. CR 165. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A resolution approving a professional services agreement between the City of North Glen and Terracon Consultants Incorporated for the 120th Avenue Improvements Materials Testing.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, Kent is still with us. Take it away.
Yep, so this is the final member of the team, and on your memo, you can kind of see the team for the 120th construction, and that was, we all went over that a couple weeks ago, all the improvements that are going to be happening there. So, again, we have Stanley, who helped us with the project administration, FHU, who are our design engineers, us and CDOT, as partners. Roxol is our consultant for the construction management services, and then American West is our contractor. So American West has their own material testing, and that's required. So that material tester is going to be doing their quality control. And Terracon is working on our behalf, and they're our quality assurance that those tests are being done to our standards. So we have selected Terracon. They've done work with us in the past and on several projects. And they've done a great job on our material testing projects recently. So this contract is for $215,361.30. And we're looking for approval as presented, and I will answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Kondo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, when I saw Terracon, the Justice Center kind of came up to mind for me. I think we've engaged with them. So having on our side, a separate entity to do the quality assurance is kind of a way for us to have a CYA, a cover your ass, pardon my French. Sort of way to protect the city if something goes wrong. Is that kind of what the intent is?
Yeah, again, the American West is the contractor, and they have their own material testing, but, we just want to double down on that and make sure that, there's no, say, funny business. I mean, we have a great relationship with American West. They've been our on-call contractor for I've been here for 10 years, so 10 years is to my knowledge, so, but it just doesn't hurt to, ensure that we're getting the density testing, the soils, the fill, all those concrete cylinders are broken to the standards that we're looking for. We're getting that PSI, so yeah, we want to do this.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open. I'll close that vote, and CR 165 passes unanimously.
Thank you. CR 166.
A resolution adopting employee guidelines for the city of North Glen, Colorado.
For approval?
Second.
Tamara Dixon, our Director of Human Resources and Chief Diversity Officer, is here to provide a summary.
Good evening,
Hello.
Mayor and Council. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Bringing before you this evening 2 employee handbook edits for your consideration. The first, emergency leave donations, as noted last month. We rewrote this policy really to make it more equitable and fair for a way to grant donated leave to any employee who may need it. The second is an edit to our paid family and caregiver leave policy. We really want to tighten this policy up to note that employees who resign from the city while out on this leave can no longer have access to the paid leave once we receive their resignation. So we are seeking your approval on both edits, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I do not see any. Thank you very much. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Thank you.
I will close that vote, and CR 166 passes unanimously.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to recess to executive session pursuant to Section 4.5D of the City of North Glen Home Rule Charter for legal consultation and advice regarding traffic enforcement.
Move to adjourn to the executive session.
Second?
Please open the vote.
The vote is open. I'll close that vote, and the motion to recess to executive session passes unanimously.
So we will recess to meet in executive session. Members of the public will need to leave. There's
go into the traffic item and
We have two discussion items tonight. The first one is the Community Co-Production Policing Advisory Board Liaison position. So we are very excited to get our CCPP back up and running. We've had some strategy sessions, and we are just excited to get it moving. One of the topics was the council liaison position on that board. And we had a conversation, but we wanted to really solidify it tonight. So I'm going to hand it over to our current liaison to that board, Councilmember Lukman Hiramasa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hopefully, what I have to say will make all of our decisions a bit easier so that we can just get to work and help this board move forward. As the mayor mentioned, that is the most important thing, is the success of this board. And I've been extremely grateful to be a part of it since day one as a resident on the board, and having that experience has been extremely invaluable. But I think just for this board to move on and for everybody to be cohesive, I think that it's maybe a little bit too close to it. Councilmember Walker and I both agree that both of us have been in it since the beginning of it, the thick of it, and it's probably best for us to step back. And I would like to support a new council liaison moving forward and offer myself as a resource to anything that is needed to help that move forward. And I'll stop.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this item? Nope. Yes.
So I just want to clarify, we're not making a decision on who that is right now?
No.
Okay.
No, and so we have, which I'm assuming it's a public meeting, we have a collaborative dinner with the CCPP current board members tomorrow. And in advance of that, we wanted to have clarity on this piece. They will not have an official meeting until their team is full. They have some vacancies, so if anyone's still awake and listening, and want to be a part of the CCPP board, they have some vacancies, so we will meet tomorrow to kind of get it back on track. We will help them fill their missing positions. And then we will also help strategize the, like a retreat to kick them off so that they're super successful. And so we probably will wait until January to put a new council liaison in place. Great. Okay, thank you. The next item for discussion tonight is traffic enforcement strategy. Chief May, come on up.
Okay, bringing this to you. So council directed staff to bring back a discussion on speeding and saturation enforcement. One thing, it could be just the terminology, saturation. So how I look at saturation, how I think the police side of it looks at saturation, similar to like DUI, where we put a lot of officers in an area to do enforcement. For example, if we see bad driving behaviors and there's a violation, we stop pretty much every car we can, see if they're under the influence of alcohol, and then really try to impact that area. The other thing too is putting a lot of resources or putting quite a few officers in an area where we can, impact that. We call it impact rather than saturation, so it's just a little different. on the statement, and then I was looking at it a little bit too, how is it different than our current strategy? I think right now is how I look at the saturation, and you guys can tell me if you meant something different, but it's visibility, right? Making sure our officers out there, making sure that they're doing in our neighborhoods, in our, those traffic areas. So this is something that we strive for. One of the things that let me move on. So some of the things that we're hearing is, again, we understand perception is reality. We understand that residents and council feels that we're doing nothing when it comes into traffic enforcement. Never see officers on our street. What it's going to take to get someone killed. Cars are traveling faster than actual speed limit. So I think, we'll just start with that, some of the, the perceptions out there when where we're at. So again, currently, with our minimum staffing, it's 3 officers and a supervisor, and we've been that quite a bit, right? So, 3 officers throughout the city, sometimes, we aren't seen in there. So as we increase our staffing levels, you're gonna see, just because of it, we're gonna see more officers out there. The other thing too, this last summer, and I understand that we knew that this was an issue this last summer, and trying to, prepare and everything. So our traffic unit, this is something that we've been looking at to increase. So currently we're at 2 officers, and, we're looking at that high accident areas. That's how we deploy our resources right now. So we're, deploying them in our high accident locations, our school zones. We do have a complaint driven where we'll use the traffic officers to supplement, patrol officers, and I'll get to that in a second, and how that comes in. One things where you guys can really help us because of the tracking is that CRM and guiding the residents, to that CRM so they're filling out, if they request certain, traffic, or if you guys, want to fill that out too, it gets in the system. When we respond back to you, that, the officers who's handling that request, it'll get back to you. Once we get a traffic request or a complaint, it goes on kind of like a sheet for our briefing room. You guys, those that have been on ride-alongs, we do the briefing, and then we have that, it's kind of a roll call sheet where we tell them, hey, these are the areas, these are the complaints come in, and that, if you're in that area, please try to do some traffic control. So this is kind of like a history, but it goes back farther than this, right? So we've had motor officers probably all the way back to, late 1980s that we've had them on motorcycles. However, 2013, we were able to get 1 back. So from like 2010 to 2013, we didn't have traffic. So in 2013, we were able to get 1 in. But as you can see over the years, it's increased, decreased. It hasn't been one of those things. This year in 2022, again, going from 10-hour shifts to 12-hour shifts, trying to increase some of the officer personnel on those going from 6 to 4 shifts, increase the number of officers in there. One thing that was we could have avoided that if we would have pulled the traffic team, but we are committed to that, traffic officers and hitting those areas that we took as a priority. I can tell you right now that most successful traffic team that we ever had that really impacted the speeding and everything from the highway to some of the roadways that we have concerns with today is when we had 4 motor officers and a sergeant, right? So that sergeant would, deploy the officers from the complaints, deploy them from the high accidents, do impact or saturation patrols on the highway. Some of those really to deter that high-end speeding. So a lot of our traffic calls for service, this gives you kind of like a 5-year what's going on. And currently to date, we have about 1,211, calls for service, traffic-related calls. That could be accidents, complaints. Actually, I think it's just of concerns. So that's where we're at. They have reduced. So our traffic citations, so in there it shows you the numbers, and this is The number of 1173 speeding tickets, that's through the end of September. So that number is going to increase, but we have gradually seen an uptick in, the traffic enforcement, especially when it comes to speeding. So this is kind of the breakdown. We were talking about those speeds that, at the 5 to 9, it shows you a number, 10 to 19, 20 to 39, and 40 plus. And it shows you how those are distributed within those speeds. Again, a huge focus, as you can see, the 784, the 1031, and I don't know, yeah, and then the 797 on the other side. Most likely in the 5 to 9, that's, again, our school zones and construction zones that, they go out there and they issue those as well. So some of the percent changes, as you can see, from 2019 to today, and they're high increases, low numbers, and then get an increase, it comes with a high percentage. However, again, I just wanted to show you that the 1173 is not the current, so that's going to be different. Most likely, I have 2 traffic officers out there. Most likely, that's going to jump above the 1377 that we saw for last year. We have seen steady growth in that section, and we haven't had 2 full-time traffic officers for a full year yet, so I can't wait. And 2023, we're going to have that, and hopefully several more. So when you're looking at our top accident locations and then the number of accidents at those locations, 2020, that's a COVID year, so some of the accidents have been much lower. And then 2021, it started people trying to learn how to drive again, and you see those numbers. And I think it's going to be even higher for 2022, looking at that. But we handled over 1,288 accidents last year, and that's quite a bit. And this just shows, total traffic citations from speeding, careless, reckless, all of those. That's what's captured in this table. With the calls for service, you want to jump in?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So with the patrol priorities, the way we work through the patrol division is that the traffic unit manages our main traffic strategies, right? They're focused on school zones, high visibility accident locations, and our high traffic pattern locations. Patrol has to support that by managing our other areas within the city, more of our residential areas, more within each ward specifically. And this is where I think we can have our biggest impact and our biggest improvements, okay? Because they're chasing a different priority, right? Their focus is emergency response. Their focus are calls for service. So even if it's not a full-out emergency, they need to respond to our citizens' issues that they have, whether they're crime-related or if they're informational. So they're managing that. And then they're proactive policing, right? It's that crime reduction strategy. It's the focus on high visibility. Everyone wants to see a police officer on their street. Everybody wants to see an officer roll down the areas of the schools. Everybody wants to see an officer in and around their community multiple times a day. Once a week, great. Once a day, fantastic. That's really what the residents want. So that high proactive policing piece is a big piece of what they do. And then it's the crime areas, right? So then they focus on where are we seeing our crime statistics? Where are we seeing our robberies? Where are we seeing our burglaries? Where are we seeing trespass to vehicles? Our stolen automobiles, along with other crime categories like our assaults and those type of criminal activity. And they're generally tied to our business corridors and areas where people are frequented, right? And then proactive traffic enforcement comes in. And this is the area where I'm redirecting some resources and redirecting a strategy within the patrol division. And that is based on when we put officers out into the field, we put them into districts, all right? They're working into the wards based on their districts. So each officer is assigned a ward for their evening. And of course, they're going to leave that particular area when they've got to respond to emergencies. But when they're not, their role is to stay within that boundary and patrol the high crime locations within their area, and then focus on the other emergency responses, calls for service, and proactive policing for those boundaries. And here's where their proactive traffic enforcement is being reorganized, it's being reassessed. I'm trying to use those officers to support the overall traffic plan, because a lot of our complaints, and I think many of the complaints you get, are much more focused on residential areas than they are our high traffic locations, or high traffic accident areas, or our school zones, right? So this is the area where I'm trying to increase our officers' efforts within their day-to-day strategies. So we're reaffirming that patrol's role in our overall traffic pattern, our overall traffic strategy. It's not that it's not been a priority, it's just that they're constantly chasing the radio, they're constantly chasing these other factors, so it falls down the priority list. So reaffirming that they have a real role in our overall traffic strategy is what I'm reinstituting with patrol, and kind of redirecting their I don't like to use the term free time, but their proactive time, right? So when they're not answering calls for service, when they're not answering, and when they're using proactive strategies, but to consider traffic as part of that proactive strategy, not just high crime locations, not just areas where we're seeing complaints, but focus on traffic as a way to also reduce crime within an area. Because again, if you drive down a street and you see a squad car with lights on, pulling somebody over, they look at that and they realize there's a presence. They look at that and they realize, okay, this is an area that, I don't want to engage in criminal conduct, not only speeding, but any other criminal conduct. So that kind of a strategy is where I think we can see our biggest improvement in our overall traffic strategy in general. Because it's really, really important that our traffic team, even at one officer, two officers, whatever it is, has that focus of high traffic locations, high accident locations, and school zones. Because we draw them out too thin, we get less of a critical response to those safety issues, right? So this is the push that I have for them. So it's really focusing on residential corridors within the districts to say, okay, when you have free time, we focus on these particular complaint locations. So that's where that CRM can come in, and it doesn't necessarily have to go to traffic, but it can go to patrol for that directive. The issue with that, and it's not really an issue, but the understanding with that, with the officers, is that that's not always going to be an option, right? There are going to be days when calls for service are going to outpace them and they're not going to be able to get to traffic enforcement. There are going to be days when an emergency response, a shooting or something serious, significant, is going to eat up a big chunk of their day. And an officer or multiple officers are not going to be able to get to that type of an enforcement. So while I say it's a great asset to increase our traffic enforcement, it's not foolproof. It's not something that's going to be a guarantee. It's going to ebb and flow. It's going to fluctuate with availability, dependent on calls for service, and dependent on the officer's availability and ability to address those specific concerns. So we're working on, identifying those locations, putting that into their daily activity, and then measuring that, right? Because what gets measured gets done. So, measuring those officers' effectiveness and how many tickets are they writing, again, with staying away from the concept of a quota, right? Quotas aren't what we're looking for, but to measure whether or not they're able to do that activity in the specific areas within their boundaries. So if we do that, we generally get results from that type of a measurement, right? And then just changing that expectation to include them in the traffic safety plan that we have for our traffic officers. And then increasing our officers, our traffic team up to 4, right? So that's a big deal. We generally run, so for this year, I know we went over over the staffing study last week, and you saw that it's not whole vacancies that we're addressing. It's vacancies plus the number of officers in training. So when you start to add those numbers up, it's significant. It's a significant number. As those officers come out of training, they begin to work on their own, and then you broaden your ability to manipulate, what they do and how they manage their time. Currently, we're sitting at 9 vacancies right now, and we're moving towards filling those vacancies before the end of the year here for our next academy, which starts in January. We already have 6 people on board to jump in to that academy, and they start November 28th. So we're working on through increasing those vacancies, but in reality, those officers are a full year from being on their own, effective, independent officers that can work without, an oversight of an FTO or still in training. They're exceeded that training. So that's one of the goals we're working towards in our patrol, and changing that priority a little bit so that patrol has a responsibility. It's always been a responsibility, but to change what their concept of is how they support the traffic strategy of the agency as a whole. Because patrol, they get in this tunnel mindset of, I've got to answer calls for service, I've got to respond to emergencies, and I got to be visible in my high crime locations. Traffic is down the priority list, and it's going to remain down the priority list because it has to. However, changing that expectation, I think, is where we may be able to get a little bit of foothold and a little bit more enforcement action into those residential areas, because I do think that from the complaints I've seen, that's probably your bigger area where you're receiving complaints from the community. It's not Washington, it's not Huron, it's not 104th, 120th. It's the block within the community. It's Claude, it's Irma, it's this, right? So when we move through our 3 E's of enforcement, we'll kind of explain a little bit further.
Yeah, I think I just covered this slide really quick. So the enforcement, you heard some of the stuff that our strategies and try to deploy those resources. Education is super important. We also can do that with the enforcement. And engineering gives us kind of like going out there and evaluating the streets and that no need for speed. Engineering has helped us a lot because if they can do it through engineering and reduce those speeds, it doesn't need, an officer sitting on that roadway. So, So one of the things that we did, we're trying, again, working with our officers, getting them out there, doing, so a big thing for moving forward is to decrease traffic accidents, improve safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. Really put those resources into those areas. With adding more officers, as we get more officers, just because we're going to get more visibility out there, and then really, putting in front of them of expectations that they're working their wards in those high complaint areas. And then, again, working with Kent and his team, when we get the data and everything else, from those streets and those speed surveys from the speed trailers, that's another thing we can put down and working together on how we can solve that problem. So, again, I think this is something that we heard that, should, option 1, continue with current traffic enforcement strategy. You heard some of our strategies tonight. Hybrid approach, shift current approach to include other enforcement tools. Some things on the horizon, we'll see if, what would help too, if we had, photo radar, machines, but currently they have to be, someone has to be running those, where there's some possible legislation where we can set those as standalones, which would be a huge help to us. And then other, just to listen to some of your feedback tonight, to see what we can also maybe incorporate that we didn't think about. So, questions?
Okay, Councilmember Goff?
Yeah, it's not really a question. First of all, thank you for putting all this together, but a couple of times you talked about the CRM, and I'm assuming that's Access Northglenn app?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so I just bringing that up because residents or people listening don't know what CRM is. I just want to make sure I did,
right.
But, so that's it, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Kondo?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I was just kind of trying to figure out, you can have, we're trying to modify behavior in this particular instance or deter people from speeding. So out of curiosity, while I was listening intently. I just surfed the internet. There's an article here in the Policy Studies Journal. It's dated May 2011. The title is Deterrence Theory and the implementation of speed limits in the American states. And there's a nice abstract here, and although the context has to do with the speed limits on a highway, the one sentence that it says in here is, the results also suggest that fines have a rather modest impact on fatalities unless states employ a sufficient number of troopers to enforce posted limits. So when I read that, it tells me that this is a manpower-intensive sort of thing if you really want to affect a deterrent. But yet at the same time, I know that we don't necessarily have a surplus of manpower to do that. So then it's causing me to think, well, what technologies are out there? So, you know, potentially part of the solution that we can talk about is having speed signs that might not only just give you the speed that you're going through the neighborhood, maybe depending on what policy and laws allow for, it flashes a red or a blue light. I think I remember seeing that actually driving on 92nd as I go out to Tower Road
So
to get to the airport.
So
But-
technology, that's one we're using it in Fox Run. And now the capability, and I think we have one unit, Kent's here, I think we have two that might be going in where it's capturing all the data. So every car that goes on that roadway, so we have all the data, the speeds, so it captures a lot. So that is a great tool for us to strategically impact areas. So we're seeing spikes, right, in speed at certain times. We can put officers over there so they're not wasting time where they're
Yeah.
waiting out there and they're waiting and they're not getting any violations. We can see some of those individuals that.
It's kind of like a fish finder.
yeah.
You know, when you're going fishing and you want to know where the hot spot is.
Because
the
a lot
hole.
of times, especially those individuals that are speeding 10, 15, 20 miles an hour, they're not gonna change, right?
Right.
So we just have one that our traffic team's, targeted, where we got him 2 times, he's eluding us, but we're gonna end up getting that individual, and then it falls under our nuisance ordinance, so that's even better, right? So, the more information we have and deploy some of those technologies, the better. Just like the photo red light, if we can get a stationary fixed unit, that's another education tool that we can use.
Well, that was kind of where I was going was, let's use technology to deploy resources smarter and not harder.
Yeah.
I guess you could call it the fish finder analogy. Can I patent that? Can I coin that term? The condo fish finder?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Walker?
Thank you, Mayor. Just before I get into the laundry list here, Chief, can you scroll back one slide? I would just like some substance for what exactly a hybrid option number 2 approach would mean. And what all that would entail, and like I said, some substance to what is in that hybrid approach.
Well, I think we have to, again, if that hybrid approach, we're pulling resources from one area. So for instance, if we're gonna pull officers, our traffic officers off of our high accident locations and putting them in areas that are complaint-driven, I think that's a change of philosophy on that hybrid approach. I think the other thing that goes in there too is we've already started some of that in our regular strategic of really trying to focus the officers and patrol officers. It's not just a traffic team response, using them. So currently what we do, that we have, and when Dan was on the team, he would handle those complaints plus try to do the 104th and the Huron and our high accident locations. But that spreads that thin, so we really looking at some of the accidents that occurred. We're just really maintaining at that point where we're not having that strong impact of reduction of accidents in those areas because the enforcement is spread through our high accident locations and then our neighborhoods by our traffic team. So what we're doing now is trying to really engage our officers, and that's the other thing going to a 12-hour shift. We do have extra time, and we've seen an uptick in our citations. So the more officers we put on, the expectation is that our officers are out there in the neighborhoods doing, that traffic enforcement.
Okay. I'll defer for right now. If
Okay.
anyone else has questions or for clarification.
Councilmember Lukman Hiramasa?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, Councilmember Kondo kind of went where I was thinking with this, that I think option 2, a hybrid approach, you can support better technology, data-driven policing or data-informed policing, I don't remember the exact terminology, I would support that, the fish finder, Hondo's fish finder. And I was gonna ask, I don't remember how many of those, I guess, data collecting radar signs we have. Was it 4 or some were damaged?
Mobile we have?
The mobile,
Mobile we have 4.
We do
one
have-
fixed.
and one,
Yeah, we have 4 mobile units that we can deploy, that we trailer behind, and we can put in different neighborhoods, and those collect data as well. And then we've installed 2 out at Fox Run that continuously collect the data, and we're getting ready to switch out in some other areas, but, you know, there's backlog on materials right now.
And those ones are on the poles,
Yeah,
and
the
they're
ones out, like, on
permanent.
Fox Run across from the
The
park, they're
stationary
on-
one.
They're on a pole and they're permanently fixed.
now the one that was on Melody Drive, that was a mobile one.
No, it's a fixed.
That was a fixed one?
Yeah, we have the portable trailers that we drag around, and we've been deploying those in school zones over the last 2 months, just shifting them every week, every Monday, and then moving them to a new location, and they just stay out 24/7.
I
Yeah.
think the one on Melody is just speed, it doesn't do collect data.
Collect data.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it doesn't
Thought
at
it
this time.
that.
It will,
It will
correct?
when we
Yeah,
switch it
when you
out,
s-
but
was-
there's not,
yeah.
we don't have them right now, everything's backordered right now.
Well, right. That definitely makes more sense to me in terms of, you know, getting data that actually shows you where the problem areas are. What other types of technology, well, you said photo radar. I know the block system can help with some other things, but I'm not sure what else is out there besides radar, photo radar vans which need to be
Yeah,
manned.
yep, correct.
Costs a lot of money.
Yeah. And just trying to find people to staff, I need officers.
But I
So-
absolutely echo that it's a better use of our resources. We can use technology in combination. Oh, but
What about a decoy car? No, I'm not kidding. Like where my parents live, they have an empty police car sitting and people slam on their brakes as they go by and there's nobody in it ever.
And then a pile-up accident?
I can't, but
it's
we
not
have
that
some, you know, the only cars we can put out there now are missing bumpers and other stuff, but, we've had, yeah, so our fleet's kind of low, but I don't think that's a bad idea. We've seen it. I mean, Louisville uses it, Lafayette uses some of those things. In North Glen, you know, I don't know how,
Put a little skeleton. You could make a decoy guy that sits in the front.
the zombie looking at the window.
I don't know. I think there's definitely technology strategies. But I had a couple of questions. So, and maybe I'm misunderstanding a couple things. So the CRM, to me, it seems like it's too late. If I see a fast car go by and I take a picture of the car and I send it to you, like, what are you gonna do with
I
that?
think it's patterns of behavior, right? So a problem's more than, you know, a couple times, right? So if we're seeing increased speeds and behavior that drive, you know, call that in. If there's a bad driver on a street, and we've done this where they call and say, hey, here's the vehicle. We've had people take pictures. This truck has been bothering us. We get a plate, we're knocking on that door. We had one this last week where they said, hey, this this truck doesn't get it. The great thing about it is we warned them, and then we ended up ticketing it, give him a ticket. So, because now that car was on our radar, it was like, we're gonna look for this thing, and we were able to get it. So the more the residents see, and a lot of
Okay.
times it's, in areas, there are poor drivers that continue to be poor drivers, and we can identify them individually. It's not a speeding problem, it's a person problem that's, you know, violating the speed. So if we can contact them and focus on them, and we've done that several times, actually quite a few times, we just need, you know, sometimes we need help from our residents when they can take a photo or, you know, in their cams, they can pick up a car, a description of car, get that to us. There was one time where we didn't have a plate. We just had a description of the car, and the officers were aware of this car, and we ended up, you know, several days later, an officer, you know, ends up pulling it over, and I think Commander Osgood said, hey, you guys get this, because that driver's causing us a lot of problems, and, you know, try to do that. So I think officers get excited about going out and taking care of some of those problems, so.
And let me just add one thing to this. As a recovering prosecutor, I prosecuted a number of cases where citizens made complaints with enough detail so the police could write the ticket if that individual is willing to be a witness. So if you see someone darting in and out of traffic that is dangerous and you call that in, we can prosecute that. We need you as a witness, but we can prosecute that.
Okay. Councilmember Walker.
So I'd just like to propose some things for option 3. Given from the police data here, I just want to give you guys some numbers. We're not writing too many traffic tickets below 10 miles an hour, and that's for reference, a 34 and a 25 is about 36% over, which is like doing 74 and a 55. And if you don't think highway patrol's not going to write you a ticket, I welcome you to test that theory. Clearly, I think we need to, there's a gap in perception right now about what the residents believe is speeding on our streets. And maybe, you know, as we talked before, maybe writing in between 6 to 10 and giving them a warning and just having that presence is something we can do as a short-term saturation study. Maybe we all propose an area. We all know our wards best. I don't know where in Ward 3 the speeding is the issue, but I know in my area where it is. And we all propose an area for saturation enforcement that we can do. And that's a short-term approach to it. You know, we'd obviously like some monthly reporting on that in the Times and the citations written, but as a long-term version or vision, I would like to see maybe something like some speed-sensitive or safety-sensitive zones where fines are doubled. And that can be in areas we propose. But that way, it's a long approach, and it's kind of like a school zone area where people know enforcement is on. We're looking for this, and so I just wanted to offer some of the short-term version for what we can do to try and get the obvious problem we have under control, and then have a long-term version too. So that's not just the squeaky wheel that's getting traffic enforcement done, and seeing who can put the most complaints in CR in. So just some things to think about. And the good thing is we have the author of the safety-sensitive zones for the city of Parker, Mr. Corey here, and he said that I believe, I don't want to paraphrase for you, but that legislation is something we could still do and move on very quickly.
Yeah, and what it does is if in areas where there's enhanced issues with speed and pedestrians, typically, it would be a mandatory double penalty on the original charged offense. So what makes that different than state law is there's no plea bargain, if you will, on the penalty. There still is as to the points, but the penalty is doubled. So in the town of Parker, it's in their school zones, it's in their construction zones, and it's also in their downtown area because they have a high intensive pedestrians in their downtown area. So you need some legislative basis for those areas, but absolutely, I drafted the ordinance in the late 90s.
97.
And so my point of that is the shift from option 2 being there's no real, you know, we're going to do A, B, and C about that, to shift to option 3 to where we offer some suggestions, you know, so that we can solve this problem that we have and say to our residents, here's what we're doing, instead of saying we're just going to shift some mindsets. We're doing A, B, C, and D. And so that's why I'm in favor of option 3.
Okay, so say more. Option 3, like a full, you're recommending like a full study session for city council to come up with strategies, or?
It could be. I mean, like when I proposed the idea of areas for all of us to nominate, it may take, maybe we need time to go back and look and say, hey, here are the areas we want to look at.
Here's where I'm stuck. Because I appreciate the presentation, and when you reflect back on where the presentation from last week, when you put the two things together. I mean, because one of the things I wrote down is if we could come up with a better way to manage gun violence, that might be helpful. Because that's a huge issue, and it's been in the news, so it's a public issue. And when you show the slide, I'm not sure which one it is, where the priorities that you have, I can see where it's pulling. It's just pulling you guys away. It's really, really hard. Speeding is the #1 resident complaint, but then I wrote down, unless it's July, and then it's fireworks. But it's a huge issue. Every single ward meeting we have, every single mayor's mingle I have, I don't know. I just went back on the no need for speed piece, and I'm thinking, I don't know where the disconnect is, but I also don't know that I have the answers. So that's where Councilmember Walker, option 3 makes me nervous, because I don't know that we have the answers. I mean, I like the idea of coming together and doing more problem solving if that's what's necessary, but I don't have the solutions myself. I think our hands are tied until we have more police officers.
And I was with Nick during his Ward 3 meeting, and a resident was, coming at him really hard, right? So I get that some residents get really fired up on that. And again, bring us into that conversation, maybe knocking on the door and give them our perspective on, but we have a huge task ahead of us of managing those resources that are available to us. And I'm just trying to figure out the best way. So we're looking at data, we're looking at accidents, we're doing that when we deploy those. Again, trying to get our officers that are actually working in those wards to spend some time. Even if you get a report, go sit on Fox Run at Center Park, or North Park, and just, you could do as long as you're there, you're gonna be visible and lose that thing. So we really wanna increase the visibility. And I can tell you right now, I don't wanna overpromise and underdeliver. And I'm afraid if, we're supposed to be on a certain street at a certain time, I'm not gonna be able to make that happen, right? Especially understanding the resources we have available to us right now. We're gonna document the best we can, but it's a challenge right now. And I have a lot of stuff that's going on. Last week was prime example, but you didn't hear about the barricade or, the hostage situation that we dealt with, or the toddler death, or everything within a 24-hour period. So we're dealing with a lot. And that we had an accident, husband-wife racing up I-25 this last weekend and crashed each other out. So we can't seize their cars because they were totaled. But again, we're dealing with a lot of stuff currently. But again, traffic is a responsibility of the police department, and we need to make strong impacts. Coming off of COVID and everything else, trying to slow down these driving behaviors in those school zones, 9, but we have traffic officers over there, and they're getting 11, 12, 13. They don't have time to even get to 6 to 9 because they're caught up on people just going way too fast in our school zone. So I think I appreciate that, but if, again, I totally understand Councilman Walker's idea and plan to dedicate resources. It's, hopefully I get more officers out there where we can be able to do some of the stuff that, again, being out there on your street and doing that, some of that resource stuff. I just don't know where I would take them from.
So let's go back to the no need for speed piece, because I was just trying to reacclimate. I know many of you are more up to speed with that one than I am. Is that how we get other traffic calming measures? Is that the only way, is to go through that process?
On residential streets.
Fox
Yes.
Run does not apply.
Fox
Yes,
Run is,
it's a
Fox Run
collector.
Parkway is not a residential street?
It's not considered a residential street like other, it's a collector. And so the Connect North Glen improvements are planned for Fox Run. And so there was a disconnect and a mistake by staff earlier in the year when the petition was circulated, and we realized Fox Run Parkway did not qualify for the program. But you can come back and share more. So, that the No Need for Speed program was in response to continued concerns and a desire by council members and residents to make improvements. And the conversation at the time, as I recall, it was very focused on speed humps. And so we've really been evolving in the use of the Connect North Glen striping approach to certain streets, the road diet in particular used on Melody Drive. So a similar striping approach is going to be used on Fox Run Parkway. Then we have all those other tools that are part of No Need for Speed. It's resident initiated, not city initiated. So we've seen some wins in terms of that partnership with residents. The safety sensitive zone piece that Councilmember Walker has brought up is a tool that we have not looked at. So I think it's something that council could very well, if you provide direction, Corey can do the additional research needed, and we can figure out, where would that best be applied in the city. I don't think it's a matter of council needing to provide staff with streets. I'd actually caution you not to go too far on that. Number one, in a public meeting where then you would tell residents, we're gonna do enforcement on this roadway, but let's try to keep the criteria as objective as possible, so complaint-driven. So, Sergeant Shu would be an example of a traffic officer that knows our streets very well from that lens of traffic enforcement, as well as Deputy Chief in Chief in terms of, how the complaints come in. We hear a lot about Melody Drive. We made those significant investments. We still know that we get complaints from a resident or two in that area that would like to see speed humps. Right now, the way our policy is written is that resident needs to initiate the no need for speed program to look at whether or not speed humps are warranted. And then we go through that whole process of collecting the data and that sort of thing. So, staff's open to, if council wants to revisit no need for speed, we can. I think looking at the safety sensitive zones would be a great next step. Looking at technology, also a great next step. And then, in time, we'll continue to work on the staffing level piece that we've talked about.
Councilmember Witkevich?
Well, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I was just going to throw my support for taking a look at the safety-sensitive zones. I think that's a good place to start. And also, I echo what others have said about using technology. But yeah, Councilmember Walker and I got beat up pretty bad at that ward meeting, and they're all like that. Sergeant Shube was at a Ward 1 meeting with me and former Councilmember Peterson. That's all they talked about. And that was like 2 years ago, I think. So, I definitely support doing something different, trying to figure out some different solutions.
Thank you. Councilmember Jaramillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree that with the safety-sensitive zones, that's something we should definitely look at. Maybe it could be, some of the criteria could be high density, where people live, so maybe have more pedestrians, high pedestrian areas, public parks, where more people are going to walk their dogs, or just go out for a walk or a jog or whatever. That could be some criteria.
And just by way of example, and that's, frankly, that's spot on. I can read you from the Parker ordinance. It's the certain areas that constitute a public safety risk based on the combination of high traffic volume and/or dangerous speeds in combination with a large amount of pedestrian traffic. So that is absolutely the idea.
All right. Great minds think alike.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that we are dedicated to doing the best we can, and as I know you are as well. But you did say something that traffic is responsibility of the police department. I think it's also the responsibility of our residents. People who are speeding need some responsibility. And, when we live in such a crowded, country right now, or area here, at least around the North Metro, any one person that just is like, oh, I got to get to the doctor's appointment, or I'm late for this, or I don't, and we just multiply that by all the hundreds of thousands of people out there on the road at any one time, and that's where we run into these problems. I've had people pass me on Grand or even Community Center Drive because I was doing the speed limit. And I just cannot imagine the state of mind you'd have to be in to want to do that, because you must be so frantically stressed out. So there's not any excuse for us not to do everything we can, but I do just want to send that message out there that each and every one of us as a driver has a responsibility.
Councilmember Lukman Hiramasa?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I like the idea of safety zones, but I still think we can't get away from option 2. So I don't see it as just being option 3. I think it's more of a combination, because without the data, how are you going to know where those safety zones should go? And I do think that it should come from solid data, not just what we hear from residents in terms of the areas they're speeding. As was mentioned, that we have a whole city to think of, not just certain streets. So I would support that, with that hybrid approach. I still think that enforcement tools that collect data are super important. It really tells a story and shows it in numbers, which I like. Thank you.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm just sitting here thinking, besides collecting data, are there some other near-term measures we can do, like, say, pedestrian crossing signals just like we have here on Community Center Drive. You know, I find that to be a very effective way to kind of get cars to realize, oh my goodness, there's pedestrians around. I need to stop and yield. And I experienced that this morning when I was walking my dog. So I wonder if there's a way we could potentially do that. And I don't know, Councilman Walker, do we already have pedestrian signal lights on Fox Run today?
We do not, we just have the data collecting machines.
Okay.
That they referenced
But
earlier.
I'm just trying to figure out, you know, something that is demonstrable and might be effective to help while we try and figure out what the right answer is. Thank you.
So I heard some support, Councilmember Walker, for the, what is the term again? The
Safety
safety
sensitive
zones,
zones.
safety, okay. That seems like, I mean, I think everyone is in favor of doing that. Looking into that, I think City Manager Guyer kind of captured and paraphrased where we're headed. What else are we missing?
Is that safety sensitive zone? I guess it's probably a discussion for later, but is that gonna be like Councilman Lucan Haramasa or Councilperson Lucan Haramasa said, gonna be data driven? So are we just gonna look for the number of complaints maybe? And then you're referencing not picking streets, so are we just gonna look for where the complaints come from?
I think we need to come up with a criteria. So Corey gave a couple examples in response to the Councilmember Jaramillo's comment. So let us come back to you with objective criteria. Again, I don't want to put you in that situation of picking streets. I think providing feedback is one thing, but then making sure we can lean on data and objective criteria to say this is how and why. And so, you know, I think one of the things that we've talked about internally was at the staff level, and Corey pointed this out, so use Fox Run Parkway as an example, and Melody Drive. Those are long straightaway streets. In terms of the sense of, you know, when you look at those streets compared to other streets, so as we're really looking at a roadway, and based on the complaints we're getting, you have pedestrians, you have parks in the neighborhood, you have bus stops. So I think there's different components, elements that we can look at that would create criteria for us to utilize and create that type of zone. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Councilmember Walker, did you have any other ideas you wanted to elevate tonight?
No, those are it. I just wanted to pitch no, Madam Mayor, just a short-term and a long-term vision for it.
Okay.
So that we can address this problem.
Well, it is a problem, I think we all agree, because no matter what ward you're in, woo! I mean, and one of the slides kind of hit home, because that is the sentence we get. What are you gonna do? Wait till someone dies? And unfortunately, that is often the case, is that action is taken immediately after a tragedy as opposed to, you know, trying to be preventative. Not that you're not, but that's how it feels to the resident, is that we didn't see anybody, nothing was done. I think that, I'm still confused about the non-residential street situation, because I agree. I mean, if we're talking about a specific street, the one Councilmember Walker is talking about, that is a racetrack. Because of the shape of it and the hills on either side, like it's just a full-on racetrack, and it's very dangerous because there is a pedestrian crosswalk right across the middle of it in the dip. So I don't know. I mean, whatever we can do to address some of these, it doesn't have to be this street, though. Is there, kind of to where I got confused, Councilmember Walker, is there another way to survey residents or to get more information as opposed to relying on the no need for speed or relying on some of the residents? Here, I'm not articulating this carefully, but what I'm wondering is, if we have working families, which we do in our city, and some of them are working 2 jobs just to stay alive. So are they missing it? And is it a priority for them? And if it's not, then we're not getting enough signatures, or does it have to be, you know, a petition where Councilmember Walker has to say, well, thank you for giving me your input as your council member, but I need to get 70 signatures in order for the city to help us move forward? Like, what is the metric for getting action?
So I guess I'll clarify something first before I go to talk about specifically Fox Run. So we
Okay.
have the traffic calming policy that was adopted and we modified a few years ago.
Right.
No need for speed is just another tool in the toolbox on top of the existing traffic calming program that we have in place. So
Okay.
the resident, the road needs to have residents that front the road. And that is the problem, or the downside to Fox Run Parkway. There's not a single resident along that roadway. It'd be like somebody calling and saying, there's a problem on 120th or 104th. It's the similar thing. So we're working internally to put together those streets that are more collector streets that wouldn't qualify for, say, traffic calming on resident driven. Now, with Fox Run specifically, and again, I apologize, we have the grant. We tried our very best to get that through this year. The bids came in too high, we had to rebid it, and we're waiting those bids. But Fox Run Parkway is the #1 priority on that list. We did put out the data collecting signals on our own, but that is going to get a road diet. And we have shown on 2 separate streets that a road diet has reduced the speed limit over 5 miles an hour. We have shown that by data. And so next spring, when we can finally get the striping down, we're going to narrow those lanes. There's going to be a park lane, there's going to be a bike lane. It's going to look like Melody, and it's going to constrict those users into slowing down. We will again be testing the data on that road to see if there has been a speed reduction. Now, that's not going to stop the lunatic who's still going 70 miles an hour. But if you can capture that on a phone and you can put that through Access North Glen, then that's the other tool that the chief can use and go find the lunatic at his own home and then give him a citation. So it's really a team effort on this whole thing. There's more policing that needs to be done, there's more engineering that needs to be done. Since the chief has lost staff, it has been over 2 years since we had a team and engineering that met together on a monthly basis to determine all these things that we're discussing. And it was magical. But we no longer, now Officer Shub is a sergeant now. Kyle's no longer here. Rupa's no longer here. Officer Waltz has been, accelerated. The traffic team has moved on. We're trying to rebuild it and rebuild that system we had a few years ago. It takes time and resources, and we're doing our very best to get there.
So real quick, remind me what year was Connect North Glen put together? Was that
North
2016?
Glen was probably 2019, 2018 that was done. And again, Connect North Glen was a separate plan to connect North Glen through bike and pedestrian mobility. Engineering took that as a tool and figured, well, if we're gonna stripe the roads, we can cheat these lanes from 12.5 feet down to 11.5 feet and duplicate not only the connectivity that the Connect North Glen was going to do, but we can restrict the traffic and constrict those drivers and make them feel like they need to slow down. So that's only one of the pieces that we have. And again, Fox Run Parkway is a little bit different because it is that collector and it isn't a resident-driven road. But we knew it was a priority and we've made it a priority. And because of the grant and CDOT and all the rules that we have to go through, we just couldn't get there this year. And, I'm sick about it as well as you are.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate hearing that. Because I went back on to look at no need for speed and the traffic calming policies, and I don't know that they're terribly intuitive, but I'm wondering, as far as community response or to have a conversation, right? So everything you just said is all factual. I'm looking at this policy. I know what we've done in the past on certain streets. Is there a place for a community event where we explain this? I mean, I don't.
There could be. Yeah, I mean, the other project that we haven't gotten to is the master transportation plan. So we've taken pieces of the pie, so to speak, and we've moved things forward. But we have not yet gotten to a comprehensive transportation plan where we look at all of our transportation infrastructure. We really take a look at our roadways. Now, transportation is a piece of our comprehensive planning effort. And so we can have some conversation with Brooke and Sarah and see how we can subset what they're hearing in terms of needs and desires, and then figure out how we could do something in-house in terms of a meeting or two or some level of engagement if council would like us to do that. It would definitely be a next year project, but we could come up with some type of approach to speaking to the concern that you're sharing, Mayor Lighty, about, you know, the average resident who doesn't have the time to engage or doesn't know how to engage. We could figure out what that looks like.
I think that would be a good idea. I know we're having them in small pockets because we're having them at all the ward meetings. My meetings get taken over by this topic as well. And the response is never, oh, well, thank you for explaining that. I feel so much better now. That's never the response, right? They always leave dissatisfied and more frustrated. So it just makes me wonder how we can hit that educate point on the slide. How do we get that to a place that is helping us all move forward? I mean, I really appreciate you bringing that update forward, and I know you guys are working so hard. This is just one of those puzzle issues that I don't know has a very clear answer that's fast.
You know, I would just add, though, I mean, if I think back, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, I mean, we have made significant progress on the traffic calming and the ability to, you know, curb speeding. Again, you're gonna have those one-offs, but again, if we're looking at the data, we put out the radars, and that's a snapshot in time over a 7-day period. Now, I think some of these ones on the polls that can continuously collect the data over a 6-month or a year period, we're gonna be able to really tell a story. But can you populate those on every single residential street? I mean, that's an expensive endeavor. But when you're taking that snapshot in time and checking that data, you know, we're able to, again, as I mentioned, come together as a group and pinpoint those locations and use our tools. Put out the trailers, maybe put up a sign, you know, put up some enforcement measures or, you know, things of that nature. But really, the complaints have, from our perspective, have kind of died down.
I can send you the email.
And we're welcome to, because that's how you find out the new troubled spots.
Just kidding.
You know, I mean, that's how we're gonna find out.
I know your team talks about it. I was just kidding. And it probably has, data-wise, maybe died down. It just doesn't feel that way when we talk to people. So I definitely understand any council member that has a concern about it. It's just, I don't think there's a quick fix. I don't see any more hands. Councilmember Walker, I know this was a concern that you had raised. Is there anything else you would like to add, or?
No, Madam Mayor, I'd like your recap on where exactly we're at come to the end.
It's a good question. Okay, well, it sounds like one of the recaps is that some decisions have been made about Fox Run Parkway and that there are some plans in place. It's just gonna take a little bit of time. Staff is gonna look at the security zone or safety zone decision. Sorry, my words are failing. What else?
So you've got the safety sensitive zone.
Thank you.
You have the pieces patrol related that Deputy Chief talked about, which Councilmember Walker, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that'll help get to the more saturation approach that you're looking for. And then the technology piece.
What about your education?
Oh, yes, and the engagement, yeah.
Yes, and I still
you.
think a decoy car is a good idea.
We
Can we
can try
find
it.
one that's in the junkyard and we'll just,
We like pilot projects.
just
They had one on
attach
Highway
it?
9 for years in Alma.
I do think they work.
When I was in the mountains recently, I actually saw a car that I thought had a decoy in it, but actually a sleeping police officer,
Oh, goodness.
which was even worse, but
Yeah, no
I will
kidding.
not name that town.
We're just gonna put one of Chief's really cool creatures in the front seat with a hat on, North Glen Police hat.
The abominable snowman.
Yeah. We could change it out with the holidays.
Or we could throw the zombies in the street and that'll make people slow down for sure.
Oh, that's a whole other strategy. It's creative, I like it. So that's actually quite a bit, now that you recap that. I think you had like 5 or 6 action steps. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for what you do as well, because it's a hard thing right now, and we know that you're prioritizing the right things. So thank you for that. Okay, moving into public invited to be heard. There's nobody left, so I'm not going to read my script. There being no further business, we are adjourned. Have a great night, everybody.